How's it going, everybody? Today we are back in the Overwatch 2 alpha test region, and I'm very excited to show you the brand new DPS hero Putricide. Just a quick thing to note before we get started, in the new training arena you can actually set the skin of the hero you're going against, which is pretty cool, and so I have Tracer set to her Atlantic All-Star skin. So Putricide's first ability is his basic orb shot. It's nothing too special. It's very reminiscent of Zarya's secondary fire. It doesn't do a ton of damage. It does, I think, 60 damage, and you have to wait for it to land before you can actually fire another one. Kind of weak. I think it may need a balance pass in the future, but for right now, that is his primary fire. So for his first ability, we have this kind of poison field that has the same kind of targeting as Reaper's Wraith, not Reaper's Wraith, Reaper's Teleport, sorry, and Sigma's ultimate. You just put it under the hero, activate it, and it does, I think, about, I want to say 100 damage over time. So really powerful if you stand in it. However, it's really easy to just kind of walk out of. A really nice crowd control tool though, and I'm definitely excited to see how this is used in game. His second ability, or his E ability, is actually my favorite of his whole kit. It casts out a Raven that actually knocks down any players in its path. So it can knock down, I think as many as are in a line, so you can get a collateral with the bird and it'll knock them down and stun them for about 5 seconds, allowing you to deal damage with your orbs, with your poison puddle, or just letting your team deal damage. Definitely an extremely effective tool in narrow corridors or small rooms, and I think we'll see a really nice combo with the Shift and E ability. And when these two abilities are put together, they create Putricide's kind of mainstay combo where you knock them down and then poison them, which is definitely enough to kill a few people or maybe even an entire team if you can get them all in a group. Overall, Putricide is big on patience. His abilities have a long recharge time, but if you can hit those combos right and be in the right place at the right time, you can wipe an entire team. Last thing to show off is Putricide's ultimate.
I'll show them. I'll show them all.
So you heard his voice line there. Essentially what this does, I actually don't have any enemies set up in the training area right now that will shoot at me, but essentially what happens is any damage you take will be dealt back to the damage dealer at 50%, which might sound confusing at first, but say a Tracer came up to me while I had my ability active and dealt 100 damage to me, that Tracer would in turn take 50 damage. So it doesn't actually protect you at all, but it damages the person damaging you. I guess think about it like Thorns in Minecraft. It's a very similar mechanic. So at times it can kind of turn things into a suicide mission. You know, you activate your ultimate, you run onto a 2 CP point, and you just get lit up by the enemy team. You might die, but your team can go in there and finish out the fight, capturing the point. You might be saying to yourself, well, people will know to just not shoot you, but then you can deal free damage yourself. As we've seen with Zarya, people have a hard time not shooting enemies, regardless if they have a damage absorbing ability active. So I feel like this ability won't be as effective in higher level play, but in the lower levels, it will definitely make a big impact on trigger happy enemies. I also forgot to mention earlier in the video that none of this actually exists. This is not an Overwatch alpha test region. This is all done in Unity. This is all fake. You may have been bamboozled, you may not have, but either way, I'm going to hop into how I did all of this. I hope you guys enjoyed my Overwatch reviewer impression. Back to game dev me now. In total, this project took about 10 hours, including the animations, VFX, and programming. Step number 1 was finding a scene, which ended up being the only expense of this project, which was the Village Environment Pack, which I think was about $38. Definitely happy with the investment. It'll be fun to use in other prototypes, and I feel like it really pulls together kind of that Overwatch feel. The next step was finding the 3D character I wanted to work with, which can be super difficult because for a good character, you can end up spending an upwards of $300, which I definitely was not about to do for this project. So I kind of worked backwards. I went out and found the character model I wanted and then started to work on the abilities and the flavor of kind of the character after that. This idea ended up working really well because when I found this Plague Doctor model, I knew exactly where I wanted to go with the character, using his crow as an ability along with a bunch of poison effects. I knew to make this project believable, I'd have to bring some actual Overwatch assets into the project, which ended up being very, very frustrating. And believe me, you have no idea how hard it is to find a fully clothed Tracer model. So I just ended up settling for a skinned one. After finishing up all of that, it was time to start on the FPS hands. To do this, I actually actual Plague Doctor model, split him apart, and then rigged him myself. I actually separated the Crow 2, edited the mesh, and added an armature to that, but that's a whole problem we'll get into later. And keep in mind, I am awful at animations, so all of this was a complete nightmare, but I think I got something at least decent working. And just like that, we have some very basic FPS animations that we will definitely need to come back to later. It was around this time that I started working on VFX to get a little more motivation to continue working on the project, and I feel like it added a lot to the overall look. Adding VFX to any game can make it look way more polished overall. So there's another quick tip for you. If you're ever feeling low motivation for a project, slap some VFX in there and I guarantee you'll want to work on it for a few more hours. It's like the magic sauce of game design. Slap that shit on there and you'll feel better about everything. Bad code, VFX. Bad animations, VFX. Chronic depression, probably see a doctor. But also VFX. That's also a perfect segue into my next point. I now have a Patreon, so if you want some VFX, head over to my Patreon page. It's $5 a month, you get an exclusive Discord role, and you'll get access to all these juicy VFX in one nice Unity package that you can use in your own project. So head on over to my Patreon and check it out, link in the description. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It helps me not be sad, and it also means that eventually I can quit my bussing job. I hate bussing tables. Please help me. At this point, I got to work on the bird ability, and let me tell you, was it a ride. The animation went okay. Like I said, I am really not good at animating, so it was an experience, but the real fun started when we got in Unity. And here you can see that I've turned my intimidating raven into a confused chicken. But after that, luckily, everything worked fine. And by everything worked fine, I mean nothing worked at all. However, this glitch by far was the most entertaining part of the project. I ran around a little too long with these guys by my side. And now we get to the final boss of the project, the UI. Now I tell you, this UI was the biggest pain in the ass I've ever experienced. For some reason, when you scale down UI in Unity, it gets pixelated and everything shifts on a grid. You can't get anything accurate for the life of you, which made it even more frustrating when I was working off a reference image and couldn't line things up accurately. And aside from dealing with that the entire time I'm trying to do the UI, I had to do all of the electricity frame by frame. I kid you not, I went through a YouTube video pausing at every frame change of this electricity in the Overwatch 2 gameplay trailer and drew over it with the pen tool in Photoshop. I have no idea why I did this. It hardly matters at all, but I tell you what, quality is in the detail, my friends, so I went frame by frame for both the ultimate and each ability. While we're on the topic of the ultimate, that was definitely the most frustrating animation for me, both because the hand wasn't turning correctly for me, and on top of that, I had no idea how to make it look like a character was drinking. So if you haven't made games before, you may not know this, but you cannot simulate fluid in real time. It takes up way too much memory, and it's just not an effective thing to do. So my fix for this was just to use some particle systems to kind of make it look like liquid was coming out. It didn't end up looking like liquid, it ended up looking more like smoke, but I'll take what I can get. I feel like the whole project kind of has a weird uncanny valley vibe where it feels like Overwatch, but not really. But that was the gist of what I did. I slapped some sounds in there, did some refinements, and that's what you saw in the final project. Just to top everything off, I made a little trailer for the character. I was gonna lead with that, but it didn't quite turn out how I wanted it to, so I figured I'd just put it on the end. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. If you did, leave a like. If you want to see more from me, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification to get notified every time I release a video. With that being said, I will see you guys next time, and roll it!
Good news, everyone! I perfected the plague.